Hello, I'm R.J. Gore, professor of systematic theology at Erskine Theological Seminary, and we're going to take a look today at the significance of the death of Christ. In order to get to it, we have to talk about something else. We have to talk about the biblical notion of covenant that we discussed a few weeks before. Covenants in the Bible were sometimes made between equals. Sometimes they would be made by someone with great power and influence and with someone with lesser importance. But the key is that they all had similar shapes and forms to them. In other words, there are obligations that each covenant partner would take upon himself. Furthermore, there were conditions attached to it, such that if I perform faithfully, good things happen. And if I don't, if I break the terms of the covenant, then it's quite likely that that may result in harm, including even up to death. In the book of Genesis, we have 3 chapters where God talks about covenant with Abram. 12, 15, and 17. 12 is the initial, 17 is the reflection, 15 is where God does something quite incredible. Listen to these words from Genesis chapter 15, beginning at verse 9. This is God speaking to Abram, and he says to him, "Bring me a heifer 3 years old, a female goat 3 years old, a ram 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon." And he brought him all these, cut them in half, and laid each half over against the other, but he did not cut the birds in half. Now, this sounds strange to our modern American ears, but in the ancient Near East, everyone would have understood. When you take those animals and divide them, and you have a line on the left and a line on the right with birds here and there, that now is the place where the covenant is ratified. The 2 covenant partners would walk between this gauntlet, if you will. And in so doing, what they would say is, "May this happen to me if I am not faithful and if I do not fulfill the terms of the covenant." But look, there's something fascinating that happens here. Abram zones out. He's awake, he's able to see it. We have a record of it. He's able to tell people what happened, but he could not participate. Instead, we see a pillar of fire and a smoking lamp proceed through. These are Christophanies, in other words, revelations or manifestations of Christ. Remember the wilderness wanderings, right? So what you have here is something that's fascinating. When we say, what is the significance of the death of Christ? Well, the answer is, you're a covenant breaker and so am I. And for covenant breakers, there's the curse of the covenant. We should die. But you see, the Lord God himself in the person of Jesus Christ took upon himself the curse that was due to me and you. And when God walked through that alone, what he said is, Abram, you're a covenant breaker. You're always going to be a covenant breaker. But I'm the covenant keeper, and I bring this upon me, a self-malediction. I bring the destruction upon me. So when you ask yourself, what is the significance of the death of Christ? It's real simple. Let me read this. The act of invoking covenant curse for covenant failure, Jesus takes the curse of the covenant upon himself. The perfect covenant keeper takes on the sin of the covenant breakers. That is the significance of the death of Christ.